They say time is an illusion, but what if I told you that all it takes to change a life forever is just 3 seconds? Not 3 years, not 3 months, not even 3 days, just 3 seconds. This is not a story about miracles. It's a story about pain, rejection, hope, and the extraordinary power that lives within a single moment. There once lived a young man named Oliver, born into a world that made sure he never forgot how different he was from the rest. Oliver was crippled from birth. His legs never worked like others. He moved everywhere in a battered old wheelchair, one that creaked with every turn. But his mind, it moved with lightning speed. He didn't experience the games of childhood, the laughter of playgrounds, or the wild joy of racing through open fields. While other children ran and played, Oliver watched from the sidelines, until even the sidelines became too lonely. He was isolated, mocked, sometimes even ignored as if he were invisible. Segregation wasn't just in the way people treated him, it was in their stares, in the silence, in the pity that soaked every word they spoke. But through it all, Oliver refused to fold into the background. He was used to the stares and the low whispers, because he had one secret gift: painting. He didn't just paint, he created. He captured emotion on canvas, the way a poet bends words to form beauty. He could finish a masterpiece in record time, and every time he did, he set a new challenge for himself, a new record to beat, a new height to climb. Someday, he believed, the world would know his name. Still, life wasn't easy. Sometimes he wondered, why do I have to carry this load of burden? Why can't I just be like every other kid? He lived with the sting of rejection, always feeling like someone from another world, a world not built for people like him. A few years later, when his parents discovered his secret talent, they came together and looked for ways to help him develop it. They enrolled him in art classes and helped him attend small local competitions. From there, his hidden talent started gaining attention. Slowly but surely, people began to notice him. But even with his growing popularity, the stigma never fully disappeared. The whispers were still there. The stares hadn't stopped. The world still reminded him that he was different from the rest. But even then, he kept going. Every year, he continued to attend art design exhibitions, pouring his heart into each piece. But it was as though he didn't exist. His work, though masterful, was ignored. He was used to the feeling, used to being overlooked. Yet somehow, unexplainably, his rank kept rising. He was quietly building momentum, step by step, year by year. Then came the opportunity of a lifetime, a prestigious international painting competition recognized by the Guinness World Records. It was everything Oliver had worked toward his entire life. This was the big one, the dream, the finish line. He met all the requirements. His name was on the list, his qualifications were solid. But on the day of registration, as he presented his documents, a cold voice stopped him. "I'm sorry, you've been disqualified." Confused, Oliver asked, "Why?" "There's no reason listed," the official replied. Oliver pushed. "I met every requirement. I've broken no rules. What's going on?" Then another official leaned over, smirking, and muttered just loud enough for Oliver to hear, "Do you really think this competition is for people like you? This is for real artists, real people. Wake up, boy." The words struck like a blade. His mother, who had accompanied him, erupted. "What do you mean by that? How dare you? He worked hard for this. He earned it." Her voice echoed through the hall, but the officials turned away, indifferent. Oliver's father stepped in to calm her down, his face tight with quiet rage. There was nothing more they could do. They left, crushed. On the ride back home, silence sat heavy in the car. Oliver stared out the window, replaying the humiliation. It was clear. Despite all he had accomplished, despite the raw brilliance of his art, the world still saw him as less, unworthy, invisible. This moment, this ugly, cruel moment, felt like the final stop in his journey. Like his career had reached a dead end, not because he wasn't good enough, but because the world refused to see him for what he truly was, a genius, a visionary, a man worth recognizing. One ordinary afternoon, the extraordinary arrived. Oliver was rolling down a quiet city street in his wheelchair, heading home after picking up a few painting supplies. It was hot. The air was thick. The street buzzed with life, children laughing, horns honking, vendors shouting. That's when it happened. A small child's ball bounced into the busy road. A little boy, no more than 5, dashed after it, giggling with the unfiltered joy only children understand. But he didn't see the bus.
No one did, until it was almost too late. The crowd gasped, hands flew to heads, some screamed, some froze. The air thickened with dread, but Oliver didn't freeze. In an instant, something inside him snapped into action. He raced forward, faster than he ever thought his wheelchair could go. His heart pounded, his palms burned, but all he saw was the child. Just before the bus could make contact, Oliver lunged. He reached the boy, scooped him up, and twisted just enough to shield the child from the impact. The rear tire of his wheelchair caught the edge of the vehicle. Just a graze, but enough to send him tumbling. His body crashed to the pavement. The boy landed safely beside him, confused but unharmed. The bus screeched to a halt. The street fell silent. Then, applause, clapping, cheering. People rushed to the scene. Phones rose, cameras clicked. "He saved the boy," they shouted. "He's a hero." As some shouted and cheered, others in the crowd whispered in disbelief and mourned, not because of the incident, but because it was the art drawing kid, the one who had been rejected, the one who was always overlooked, now being celebrated. The contrast was sharp. The same boy who once couldn't get a slot in a competition was now the center of applause. The child stood up, looked at Oliver, still on the ground, and gave the purest smile, clapping his tiny hands with delight. Oliver, bruised and bleeding, smiled back through the pain. An ambulance came. They lifted him carefully. The boy's parents sobbed as they thanked him, over and over. "God bless you. You saved our son. You're a hero. How can we ever repay you?" It was overwhelming. But in that moment, as the sirens wailed and the pain crept in, Oliver realized something he would never forget. All it took for the world to see him, not as a cripple, but as a man, a hero, was 3 seconds. 3 seconds of courage, 3 seconds of action, 3 seconds that transformed everything. At the hospital, as nurses treated his wounds, Oliver lay still, his mind racing far faster than his body ever could. He replayed the moment over and over, the bus, the boy, the leap, the applause, the words. "Thank you. You're a hero. We love you." Words that had once felt like distant dreams, words he'd never heard in his 30 years of life. Now they poured out like rain, and in those moments of quiet reflection, he saw something clearly for the first time. It doesn't take a lifetime to be recognized. It takes a moment, if you're ready for it. A few days later, as Oliver lay in the hospital room with bandages still wrapped around his arms, his parents sat beside him, holding his hand gently. They exchanged nervous glances before his mother leaned in. "Oliver," she said softly, "do you know who that boy was? The one you saved?" Oliver looked at her, confused. "No, just a kid." His father nodded slowly. "That child is the only son of Emmanuel Adigwe, the renowned art exhibition legend, the one whose exhibitions you've watched on TV since you were little. His wife and their son were only in town briefly, just for a holiday." Oliver's heart stopped. His mind flashed back to the bus, the crowd, the screams, the moment he lunged. Then suddenly, everything aligned like pieces of a puzzle. It wasn't just coincidence. This was something else. This was the universe giving him back what it had taken for so long. It hit him in waves, the rejections, the shame, the years of being ignored. The world had tried to erase him, but now, unexpectedly, life had handed him a second chance, wrapped in the innocence of a child. He sat up straighter in his bed, eyes suddenly alive. He knew exactly what he had to do. This time, he wouldn't beg for a place. This time, he would claim it. That same day, the man himself, Emmanuel Adigwe, walked into the hospital to meet the hero who had saved his only son. He came not with words alone, but with action. He brought along everything he thought the boy might need: a sleek, motorized wheelchair, fresh sets of canvases, fine brushes, even a PlayStation gaming console to keep him entertained during recovery. But Oliver had something else on his mind, something bigger than gifts. He looked up at the man with steady eyes and said slowly, "Sir, may I make one request?" Emmanuel chuckled, placing a warm hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Go ahead, my boy. I'm in a good mood. You saved my world. I don't think there's anything you'd ask that's beyond my reach." Oliver took a deep breath and began to share a story that had been buried deep inside him, a memory he had locked away. 2 years ago, I was set to compete in the Guinness-recognized global art competition. Everything was in place. I had practiced for months, met every requirement. But on the day of registration, I was turned away. No reason, no explanation, just rejection. I was told, "This competition isn't for people like you." As the words hung heavy in the room, Emmanuel's expression darkened. He leaned in. "You mean to tell me that happened? To you?" Oliver nodded, his voice low. "I was just a boy from a low-income family, disabled, easy to cheat, easy to silence." Emmanuel pulled out his phone, his jaw tight. He dialed a number with practice speed. "I'm sending you a name, make some findings for me, and fix what needs to be fixed, immediately." Before he left the hospital room, Oliver's phone buzzed. A new email. Subject line, "Your entry has been approved. No application, no interview, just recognition." Oliver read the words over and over. His hands trembled. Then the tears came, soft, disbelieving tears of joy. The boy they once tried to erase had just been written into the world's story, forever. The day of the exhibition arrived. Oliver rolled onto the grand stage, his heart pounding in his chest. Cameras flashed, reporters gathered, and then he unveiled his piece. A breathtaking portrait of a child on the edge of a road, light and darkness clashing in the background, a hand reaching out to pull him back. The crowd gasped. He didn't win second place or third. He won everything. The top prize, a massive purchase offer, global recognition, interviews, headlines. He was no longer the man in the wheelchair. He was Oliver, the genius, the hero, the artist. And when they asked him, "Why did you risk your life?" he answered calmly, "Because I saw an innocent child about to become what I've been all my life, and I couldn't let that happen." They asked, "What changed your life?" He smiled. 3 seconds, that's all it took, that's all it ever takes. Now, Oliver travels the world, inspiring others with his story. He tells crowds, "Your moment is coming," and when it does, it'll take just 3 seconds to shift your entire reality. 3 seconds when you hear, "Congratulations, you did it." 3 seconds when someone shakes your hand and says, "You're hired." Or when your phone rings and the voice says, "We picked you." 3 seconds when you look at your bank account and realize you're rich. Never stop believing in your moment, because it only takes 3 seconds for everything to change. Stay safe and cheers.